Okay, let's dive into this. We're breaking this down into three sections today. First up, global flashpoints in diplomacy. Second, justice, politics, and labor. And finally, consumer impacts and culture. Section 1, global flashpoints and diplomacy. We're setting the stage today with the major international security crises that are absolutely commanding world attention right now. And honestly, recent events brilliantly illustrate a huge shift in modern conflict. Let's look at Eastern Europe. Ukrainian forces just conducted this major, large-scale drone strike deep inside Russian territory. But then, in a totally different geopolitical theater, tensions are still incredibly high in the Middle East. A drone strike just sparked a fire at a nuclear power plant in the United Arab Emirates, which is an incident directly tied to the broader deadlock with Iran. So what are we really seeing here? Across both regions, there is this rapidly escalating reliance on drone warfare. It's a fundamental game changer in military strategy, allowing for these remote strikes on critical infrastructure right across borders. But, we always have to remember that these high-level geopolitical strategies, they have very real human consequences on the ground. As a direct result of that large-scale Ukrainian drone strike inside Russia, 4 people are dead and 12 have been wounded. It's a stark reminder that behind all the tactical maps and the wild technological advancements in unmanned aerial vehicles, there is always a very sobering human cost. Now, the phrase fraudulently diverted is doing a whole lot of heavy lifting in international security circles today. And it brings us to this fascinating, honestly kind of messy issue with global supply chains. So Cadex Defense, they're a Canadian firearms manufacturer, really well known for high-precision rifles. They recently had to announce that their weapons somehow ended up in Russia. And the absolute key takeaway here is that this happened entirely without the company knowing about it. Their equipment was literally fraudulently diverted, completely bypassing the intended destinations. It really just highlights how incredibly difficult it is to actually control the flow of high-tech weaponry and how easily global sanctions and export controls can be manipulated by secondary actors. Shifting gears over to top-level diplomacy now, some incredibly high-stakes summit talks have just wrapped up over in Beijing. President Trump has officially departed following his direct negotiations with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Those talks between the two leaders, they were heavily focused on the international trade dynamics between these two massive economic superpowers. They also spent time addressing a few really critical regional security issues. All in all, a major moment for face-to-face diplomacy on the world stage. Moving from international security over to global health, we actually have a major escalation to report. The World Health Organization just officially declared the ongoing Ebola outbreak in Congo and Uganda as a global health emergency. And guys, this isn't just some bureaucratic label. It is a critical international classification. It signals the escalating severity of the crisis in Central Africa, and it immediately unlocks international funding, resources, and this coordinated global action to try and contain the spread of the virus before it crosses any more borders. Okay, let's move to our next segment and see how this builds our understanding as we transition down to some deeply deadlocked domestic landscapes right here in North America. Section 2, Justice, Politics, and Labor. We've got 2 highly significant domestic stories unfolding right now, and both of them are really defined by their outcomes. First, looking at U.S. primary elections. Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy just lost his GOP primary to a Trump-endorsed candidate. Now, Senator Cassidy is especially notable because he was one of the few Republicans who actually voted to convict President Trump following the events of January 6th. Meanwhile, over in the New York justice system, Harvey Weinstein's 3rd sex crimes trial has officially ended in a mistrial. The judge had to make that call after the jury remained completely deadlocked on the rape charges. So you have 2 entirely separate realms of American civic life, politics and the courts, both experiencing these massive pivotal moments this week. Moving a bit north to Toronto, we're seeing an immediate threat to the city's critical infrastructure, with some seriously escalating labor negotiations. It all started with the Toronto Transit Commission, the TTC, and electrical workers jumping into these urgent, last-minute talks to try and avoid a strike. Well, those negotiations stretched all the way through the weekend, no resolution in sight. And that brings us to the very real, very looming threat of a major city transit work stoppage. It's honestly a perfect example of how one localized labor dispute can instantly threaten to basically paralyze the daily movement of literally millions of people. Section 3, Consumer Impacts and Culture. So we've gone from drone strikes and global health emergencies down to domestic courts. And now we are zooming all the way in on how current events ultimately touch you, the individual consumer. So the crucial point here is that these massive corporate investigations do eventually trickle down right to your wallet. You see, for years there's been this sprawling, long-running investigation into bread price fixing among major grocery retailers up in Canada. For a long time, it just felt like this abstract corporate scandal, right? But right now, today, eligible Canadians are actively seeing actual settlement payments deposited directly into their bank accounts. It's the ultimate, tangible, micro impact of a huge macroeconomic scandal. It's literally affecting the price of the food on your table and the actual money in your bank. Now, what's really interesting about this next topic is we actually get a moment of sheer, undeniable cultural joy after what's been a pretty heavy news cycle. In a massive cultural victory, Bulgaria has just taken home the top prize at the 70th Eurovision Song Contest. And they didn't just win, they won with an absolute high-energy party anthem called Bungaranga. I mean, it is just a spectacular, uplifting reminder of the power these global cultural events have to unite millions of people across multiple continents in pure entertainment and celebration. And that brings us to our final thought for today. We have zoomed from drone strikes in Eastern Europe and the Middle East all the way to high-stakes diplomacy in Beijing. We looked at a mistrial in New York, went straight down to a literal cash deposit in your bank account for a loaf of bread, and finished up with a party anthem uniting Europe. So I want to leave you with this question to reflect on. In a world that is moving this fast, how interconnected are the seemingly small local events in your daily life to the massive, overarching global news cycle? Think about it. As always, keep looking for those hidden connections. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I will catch you next time.